determination, we want to see what is the difference between growth and development. Okay, and I can see there is some China language, so let's see if we can sort that out. So when we grow, we mean a permanent increase of cells, which means by cell division, or a permanent increase in the dry mass. It means the cells do not only increase in number, but they can only increase in size. No. So permanent growth is a permanent action, increase in the number of cells or increase in the size of cells. So if I gain weight, it is not necessarily growth, because I can lose it again. No, a permanent change. Okay. When you are young, it is permanent. Can we talk English, please?
If you're German, you get very strong and big muscles.
Yes.
It is not growth.
It is not growth. You can lose it again. If it is possible to lose it again, it is not growth. So with growth, we actually try to say it is increase in the number of cells, increase in the size of cells, in order to develop better. To develop better. So when we look at humans, or animals, there is a stage in life where growth is taking place. You agree with me? A stage in life where growth is taking place. We can measure it. What is actually happened during this growth stage is this number of cell increase. Let's think from zygote to embryo. You agree? That's an increase in the number of cells. Nee. And that is which type of cell division is taking place from zygote to embryo. Is it meiosis or mitosis? Mitosis. Because it is the same genetic material that we want to keep. Okay. But then, with this increase in body size, we also have development. And that is what I want you to understand. Development is a stage that happens during growth. I want you to think like this. Let's think, little baby and two little babies grow up. And then, at a specific stage, we have what we call secondary sexual characteristics. Now, you remember? Will you call the happening of secondary sexual characteristics growth or development? Development. Because now that specific structures starts to change. Structures start to change because it now needs to fulfill another function. Okay. Let's start to think about that little zygote that now change into an embryo, and then the embryo starts to change. Some we can now say, there's a little bundle of cells that is moving. That must perhaps be the heart. Nah, that can be the heart. Okay. Or some other cells starts to make little outgrowths. That will become the legs or the arms. That is development. So when we read in our textbook, and we are there at at the start of the next chapter, which is chapter 28. Can you quickly go to chapter 28? And we are now referring to Wim Appel's textbook. 28. 471. 471. Growth is the permanent, irreversible increase in size and dry mass, taking place as the cell absorbs materials, expands and divides. Do you have the definition of growth? And then the definition of development. Development is the stage in growth which include changes in structure and appearance of cells. And now we talk about differentiation. I think that is what I needed to have there. Differentiation and specialization. And I am really not sure how to change it, so let me just write it in there. Differentiation and specialization. Now, I always try to explain, when we study biology, we look at a diagram. Nee. Let's take the diagram of the flower. And I said, make sure you know the labels. The second thing I say, make sure you see how is the structure, adapted for its function. Nee, let's take petals. We know the name petal, but a petal does not look like an anther. Why not? A petal needs to attract the insects. Therefore, it's large, it's bright, it got the nectary guides on it. But when we look at the anther, we see it is making pollen sacs or chambers. Can you see? And with that, we now start to understand, okay, differentiation is showing me a specific structure. And with that, it is specialized to perform a specific function. Do you understand that? And that is what is development. So growth is not development, but development is growth. Do you agree? Growth is not development, but development is growth. Because growth implies increase in the number of cells. When I have many cells, they can change in order to perform a specific function. Okay, that is very important to us to introduce this chapter. Now, when I look at a stem cell, what is a stem cell? A stem cell is those embryonic cells that started out the embryo. And those cells in the embryo has the ability to become any other cell. The stem cell has the ability to become any other cell, yes? You do not have stem cells or many anymore. But when you were in your embryonic stages and right after your birth, you have still stem cells left. And so what they now do is they take stem cells and they freeze it for later in your life, where they can activate those stem cells, because they use the word stem cells are omnipotent, which that means they can change into any type of cell depending on how it has been stimulated. So it is those bundle of cells there that we actually called an blastula. You remember? If we can just look at that picture in your book, please look in that big picture of your book on page. You have it on page 444. On page 444, we have a stem cell, a diploid zygote, and there they say it changed into a morula, which I always remember like murbei. Nah? It's looking like that fruit that we eat, morula. And then it's changed into a blastocyst, blastula, and then a blastocyst. A blastocyst is where I have a lot of cells and each cell has the potential. Now some of this cells is breaking from the blastocyst and it drifts inside the amniotic fluid and they extract that from the amniotic fluid and then they test. They call it an amniocentesis, where they can test if there is any kind of deformity from that, especially for Down syndrome. They put a needle into the amniotic sac of the mother, they pull out fluid, and they test the cells that are drifting or floating in there. Okay, so now it is those cells that they call stem cells. And there is a special recipe inside the nucleus of each cell. At first, all the switches are on. And then later, some switch off. And as it switches off, it becomes a red blood cell, or liver cell, or a bone cell, or whatever different cell is needed inside the body to form the organism. And that is the amazing thing. Because I always think, how does each cell knows which switches must be on and which must be off? Okay, right. So let's continue and let's go back to, now we are going to focus on plants again. So plants and human beings, animals, we all have the stem cells and it needs to develop. In order for a plant to start, it starts as a seed. So in order to form a seed, we have two types of seeds. We have endospermic seeds and we have non-endospermic seeds. And if you look in your book, they say in germination, we only have to study non-endospermic seeds. What is the difference? I want you to look at this. If the endosperm that forms, where did the endosperm forms? The endosperm formed when I have my one male gamete that fuses with the ovum, and the other male gamete fuses with the two polar bodies to form a triploid endosperm. You remember now? Yes, Josh? Joshie, you remember what I'm talking about? That formed endosperm, and the next sentence was, the endosperm forms the nutrients or the food storage for the embryo. Now, interesting. This is only for a short while, because then we have those endosperm divides repeatedly to form the endosperm in the endospermic seeds. This endosperm acts as a food store for the developing seed. In the non-endospermic seeds, the endosperm is used up in the early stages of the seed development, so the food is stored in the cotyledons. Now, and to make sure that we do see the picture is we look at, you can look at the little paper that I handed out to you, or you can look on my screen endospermic seed, the plant embryo increases in size, sorry, only absorbs some of the endosperm. Like in a corn seed or in the maize seed that you have on your picture, can you see there's a lot of endosperm left and the seed develops on the embryo develops on the one side. When we look at the pea seed or the bean seed, the plant embryo increases in size and it absorbs all the endosperm. There's no endosperm left. The storage is happening in the cotyledon. Okay, you have that? Remember, you are higher level. Therefore, I'm trying to show you all the little small parts of detail that they can ask you. Remember, Joshua, Janus, to be higher level is to know the detail in your book. You have a heading, non-endospermic seeds. Now you must ask, okay, if this one is non-endospermic, what is endospermic then? Nay, please, that is how you prepare yourself. And we are in the later stages of your year. Okay? We are at the end of your year. And therefore, I want you to start thinking about that. Here, just to remind you, we have the micropyle. You remember what was the function of the micropyle during fertilization? No, you do not have a clue. Yes, what was it?
It's for
What grow in there?
the pollen tube to grow in, and when it's a seed, it's a hole for the water and oxygen to get in for it.
Excellent.
I can't remember the word.
Excellent. But excellent, you got it. There we see the little opening. In the phase when it was only a flower, it was for the entrance of the pollen tube. Nay. But now, when it's a seed, it is to absorb water. Because water and oxygen, but the water will start the onset of germination. Well done. Okay. There's lots of hope for you. So here, just for the sake of the video, you can read through because I actually said this, but then there you have it in words. Okay, and there I have another picture just to make it very clear to you. The pink is cotyledon. The yellow is endosperm. In the non-endospermic, all the energy that was in the endosperm is now helping the embryo to grow. The embryo further needs to extract energy from the cotyledon. Here, the energy is still in the endosperm. Okay. Ach, nee, sorry, I think. Let me just quickly change the... Okay, there is germination. Believe it or not. Germination is the heading there. And I want you now to copy this. So I want you now to read yourself because Joshua, if you don't start doing something now, you are going to bump your head against the table. Now, so please write the word